Well, Statistics South Africa will this morning release the latest unemployment figures for the final 3 months of last year. Around 16.9 million people are still without jobs. Let's unpack all of this with the former Statistician General, Dr Pali Lehohla. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us this morning. The President, in his State of the Nation address, had a lot to say about the strides being made in getting our young people into jobs. This was during his State of the Nation address last Thursday. When you were listening to what the President was saying versus what we see on the ground, Dr Lehohla, what are we to make of that?
Well, I suppose the lens of our eyes can't read adequately. So I have to rely more on the lens of the Statistician General, who has time series data. And by looking at that lens, from about 2018, we started crossing over into higher unemployment numbers, in absolute terms, by the way, from where we were in 2008. That crossover happened around 2017 and has been increasing since then. While in 2008, we had 4.5 million people who were 25 to 34 in employment, and 1.5 million between 15 to 24 in employment, which means it was 6 million. By 2025, that number has dropped. The 1.5 million has dropped to 1 million. The 4.5 million has dropped to 4 million. And this happens in a growing population. So when the youth look at this and experience this, which is what the naked eye sees, that resonates with the depression that they are in. So when the President read his State of the Nation address and said jobs are coming out, unemployment is dropping, surely it's very difficult to say we see the same picture. Absolutely not. So I think if we could rely on the time series data rather than on in your desk or in your shelf kind of data that comes from YES, which is the youth employment, whatever it is called, that initiative, it really is very misleading to say that we have 2 million job opportunities for the young people. The time series data shows that these young people are not getting jobs. In fact, they started losing jobs from about 2018, and that is continuing up to now. So I don't know where the President gets his numbers from.
Yeah.
He has an institution that is credible globally, that provides numbers. You cannot have pet projects providing national numbers. That's really undermining the system.
Sure, that's so true and damning, isn't it, Dr. Lehohla? Because, you know, just looking today, the SANDF is having an event today in Thohoyandou. There are various other points where our reporters are stationed where we can see young people queuing up for jobs. These are young people who completed matric a long time ago and have been sitting at home without a job. And the queues are just heartbreaking to see. Because there's a hunger for work for our young people and in our communities. And yet the President talks about these job opportunities, which are so misleading because we know they don't result, in most cases, in permanent jobs.
Well, STSA has created a time series of a period of unemployment for young people. It is extending to 3 years now, to a point where, I mean, we have seen the need, not in employment or in education or training. We have also seen the discouraged going into cycles of 5 years. So by the time we have gone over 5 years, nobody will ever employ you. So you are going to be in a life of intent when you grow old. So you need to move from being 15 years, hopefully to be 65, so that you can start getting intent. This is what we have created. And I want to get back to Moshomi on responsible leadership, because I think as South Africans and as Africans, we really have to understand what Moshomi was talking about. He was born in 1713 in Ngodilo in the Free State, which was Lesotho then before the Boers and the English came together to undermine Lesotho and steal that land, which is called the Free State now. That's besides the point. It's something for the future. But Mohlomi said, a responsible leader, and this is what we need to understand, a responsible leader knows himself, knows the people he leads, of course, he, she, and mobilizes stakeholders for productive relations. That is, the stakeholders are mobilized in order to get productive. They use new instruments of power to ensure and guarantee intergenerational value through integrated reporting. Now, look at Mohlomi's statements and put the mirror in front of the president on that and ask the question, does the president, as the sum total of our leadership as people, meeting Mohlomi's definition of a responsible leader? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. And the answer is no, we don't. So if we cannot, so the first thing, if you break down this thing one by one, we have integrated reporting. There's no integrated reporting. Otherwise, if there was, the president wouldn't be mentioning the yes numbers. He'll be relying on the time series information of the statistician general as the only source. And on the basis of that, he'll come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
And then he'll come to a conclusion not only of the numbers, but he will break them by race, and he'll find that blacks and coloreds are the most unemployed. Then he'll have to ask why. Then he'll find that in the education system, actually, the progression ratios from matric into university, the harvest from matric is not something to be glorious about, to say that we have increased the pass rate from 89 to 88 or to 90. That's nothing. Because the progression ratio from there and the harvest for getting into university or getting any further education is so small for coloreds and black people. Then we'll ask the question, why is that the case? Then we have to look at apartheid and migration systems. Have we addressed that? We haven't, because the apartheid city space is still very much with us. And when we look at that and we go to the family, we'll ask the question, who are these children? We'll find that 32% of the mothers say they are married to 68% of the fathers. That diagnosis gives you where the rupture is. And then we'd have to address the rupture. When we address the rupture, then we'll say, pay for every child. Because if we will start nitpicking and say we'll pay for the rich and not the, you'll pay for the poor only and not the rich, based on the income, joint income of people who actually don't cohere. Because I think the Minister of Education has no clue that that lack of coherence plays out in the issue of violence, gender-based violence. So the integrated reporting gives you this story. And this is what the Lehohla ledger provides, integrated reporting. And at lowest levels of geography, based on time series, and that's what the statistician general is giving us. But there's absolutely mindlessness in terms of trying to search for the truth. And the truth is in the numbers.
Dr. Lehohla, I wonder if it is mindlessness. This issue of integrated reporting, essentially you're talking about context, right? Giving us the full picture. You've mentioned the matric pass rate, for example, but we don't tell the story. Certainly the president didn't tell the story in the State of the Nation address of how many young people actually enter the school system, enter the high school system, and how many of those young people make it all the way to matric and then into university. Is it just a case of willfully picking the numbers that work to tell the best story for the government of the day? Because let's not forget, we're in an election year as well.
Well, I mean, we have been in an election year all the time. Every 2.5 years, we are in an election year. So the lead period is 2 years. So we are perpetually in this election year where politicians like Socrates will define them. I mean, they are merchants. who trade with people as merchandise, and trades with people as currency. So the currency is the SDR, and the trade, the merchants, the merchandise are the people themselves, the votes that they bring. So when Socrates says politicians are merchants who trade in people, the plebiscite, as merchandise and currency, he's correct, and we can see it in practice, where we are selective about the truth, we are selective about the numbers, and when we cannot have the view of integrated statistics by the statistician general and nitpick and also make a mockery of statistics. If South Africa would get out of trouble and crisis when it grows at 6%, 0.5% is not anything to look at because it is so below the threshold that every cycle is a deteriorating cycle. When the harvest from matric, it's only 12 or 20% for Black people, it's below the threshold. You've got to go up to 50% to be, positive, to get a positive spin-off. Below 50%, you are going to get a negative spin-off all the way. So it's misunderstanding the velocity and the impact that comes out of that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have an idea around that, and also, more importantly, is the absence of a chief economist in the country. There's no chief, the country doesn't have a chief economist like it has a statistician general. If the statistician general cooks the books, we know who to slit, whose throat we should slit. But when the economy misbehaves, you don't know where to go.
Right.
You go to the Reserve Bank, you go to the Treasury, you go to IDC, you go to all these people, and each one of them wash their hands. So if you don't have a person like Bale and Smuts in the country, where Smuts was the president and Bale was the scientist, and the two then crafted, and when we don't have scenarios in the country, I mean, since we abandoned scenarios in 2008, we are wallowing like wind in the ocean.
Yeah, and sort of just pandering along, trying to paint the best picture we can, but not giving any context, ignoring the real numbers. Dr. Pali Lehohla, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.